first style we have, and arguably my favourite, is the vertical habit tracker. This involves listing the days of the month down the side of the page, and then along the top here you have the habits. I typically like to use icons to represent my habits, just as it still allows space at the top for a header. But depending on how many habits you have, or how many columns of boxes you want each habit to take up, you could always have your header run down the page instead. Similar to this, we have the horizontal style habit tracker, which is viewed by turning your journal. This one still has the numbers of each day along the side, but this is viewed as the top of the tracker. Along this edge, you list out each of your habits, again the sizing of which depends on where you want to have your page header. Another style of horizontal habit tracker, but this time having your journal the right way around, involves having it span 2 pages. The majority of A5 journals don't have enough columns of boxes across to have all of the days of the month running along the top, so spanning 2 pages allows us to fit all of them in. So in this style we have days along the top and habits down the side. Sometimes splitting your tracker over 2 pages just isn't a favourable thing to do, which is where our next idea comes in. Another horizontal layout, but this one involves having the days of the month across 2 lines. Depending on how many habits you want to track and how you arrange those rows of boxes, this one can be a good style to allow for decoration as well. Another style of tracker that works with 2 lines is what I'm going to call the 2-row vertical tracker. This tracker has the month over a full spread, just as each day takes up 2 rows of squares. As you can see, this tracker was also combined with a line a day space, which was just a nice way to see what might have influenced the level of completion for my habits. The next style we have is the mini calendar habit tracker, where you have a mini calendar for each of the different habits that you're tracking. This one is great for being able to see weekly patterns in your habit completion. So for example, are you not getting a certain habit done on Mondays or Fridays? Identifying patterns like this can help you identify the points in your week where you struggle with certain things, which then gives you the opportunity to think beyond this and think, how could I actually remedy that? For instance, you can see on this one, I was very good at getting to bed by 10:30 on Mondays, but towards the end of the week, that's where I really started to struggle. Another one of my favourite styles of habit tracker are these circular styles. You may have also seen these as partial circles, half circles, etc., but they all work on the same principle. You have a circular shape, which has enough segments coming from the centre for each day of the month, and then each ring around the centre represents a different habit. I do have a video on this one that I've linked in the description box below about how to draw these out and make sure that they look evenly spaced. But otherwise, I do offer printables for these on my Patreon, as well as the next 2 styles that we have. A little easier to draw than circular trackers, and yes, I do have a video on this one too, we have square trackers. It works on a similar principle though, so segments coming out from the centre for each of the days of the month, with each concentric square being a different habit. Of course, I have to mention the style that I'm using for my current month, so we also have the hexagonal tracker. Again, same idea, daily segments and concentric hexagons for habits. This one is much more difficult to space out properly though, so I'm even using one of my printables for the month. Much easier. The trackers we've looked at so far are really good for when you're tracking a fair few habits, or at least more than one. But sometimes you want to focus on just the one, or a smaller select few habits. For those, some different styles can be fun to use. This tracker style is what I'm calling a monthly challenge tracker, mainly because that's normally what I use this style for. This involves having a track of boxes that just weave throughout the page, each with a number for each day of the month. Typically, depending on the size of the boxes you're using, you will have some extra space left over either for decoration, or what I normally do is just have some little boxes for notes that are related to that habit. So things like, why am I tracking this habit? How am I going to achieve this habit? Things like that. Another style that's good for tracking just one or a small number of habits is the decorative habit tracker. Although this one does say mood tracker, it works in the same way. The idea is that you either have one larger doodle that you can then separate into segments that represent each day, or similar to what we have here, a page of doodles that are all a repeating element. So in this case, Christmas baubles. Each of the baubles I have here is split into 3 sections, so a red, a green, and a yellow. which are related to the 3 things that I'm tracking at the top here. As you can probably expect, this was a December tracker and thus Christmas baubles, but it can be really fun to use a similar idea in whatever theme you're using for the month. So for instance, the month prior I was doing a succulents kind of theme, so I had little pot plants with all of these different succulents, and again tracking those 3 things. So tracking whether I was stressed or relaxed, motivated or apathetic, and then mood in general being positive or negative. Of course, these ideas were mainly related to habit trackers, but each of these styles could also be used to track other things on a daily basis. For instance, mood, productivity, steps, water intake, sleep, etc. As I mentioned at the start though, there are also a range of things you can do to really make a habit tracker your own and work best for you. One example is how you write your habits in. So do you want to use icons or do you want to write your habits out in full? You could also use numbers to represent your habits. Or you could color code them. Another way to change it up is considering how will you mark off a habit as complete. Do you want to use a colored box or colored dot? You could use something like a repeating pattern. You could check them off with ticks or crosses, really anything you want. It can also sometimes be good to note down the level of completion of a habit. So was a habit partially completed or fully completed? This can either be done by using a color code, or you could segment your boxes depending on what kind of habits you're tracking. For instance, on this one, the little knife and fork meant that I had a healthy meal for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and my snacks. So this column was divided into 4 separate sections, one for each of those meal types. Another way of changing up your trackers is by considering the time range that they're used over. For this video, we've mainly looked at monthly trackers, but you can also have yearly or half-yearly trackers, or even trackers you have on a weekly basis. This really just depends on how you like to track and also what you want to track. A lot of the trackers we've looked at could be suitable for a weekly tracker, though the vertical and horizontal styles are probably more suited towards our yearly or half-yearly trackers. Question of the day for you guys though, what is your preferred style of habit tracker? As I said, I tend towards the vertical style, but I do enjoy trying different ones. Thank you for watching though team, hopefully you found today's video useful or interesting, and if you did, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to see more on planning, productivity, and personal development. Until next time, bye!